Hello, God bless from Up Ministries. It's me, Dick Jr. Now I'm going to read you Mark chapter 14. Coming down to the end of Mark, it's only 18 chapters long. So, and like most of Mark, it's very rapid fire. This chapter's a little lengthy, 3 pages plus. But it's a straight read through because this is about Jesus, and I'm just going to read you the gospel as it is. And I don't feel impelled to wander off from this too much. You know, there's a lot of words of Jesus in here and a lot of things that we really need to get back to in today's church. Those things being said, I prayed before I started this video and asked God to help me to speak to you. I asked him for knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and the gift of utterance. I don't know if, those are what I asked for. And I suggest any time that you place yourself in God's word, that you ask for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. I also suggest any time that you are confused or lost in any way, that you ask God for the same things, okay? And he will help you. I'm just going to say, see what happens, okay? And continue to pray, though. You just gotta continue to pray. Those things being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. This is basically about Jesus' last nights before he's taken in, or up to the point where I believe he's taken into custody, I think, in this chapter here. Now the Passover and unleavened bread were 2 days away. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to seize him by stealth and kill him, for they were saying, not during the festival, otherwise there might be a riot of the people. And that's because so many people would believe Jesus to be a prophet and John to be a prophet, and they had heard him preach, they had seen his miracles, and they knew who he was. For they were saying, not during the festival. And while he was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper, I want to take a special note that you listen to this as we read this. This is 2 days before the Passover, 3 days, okay, 3 days. This is also in the house of Simon the leper. So this is one incident of what is about to happen. There are more than one instance in the Gospels. Most people assume that what's about to happen only happens once. It happens more than once, because if you read the stories and listen to what it's saying, actually read it, this has happened at Simon the leper's house 2 days before the Passover feast, just before Jesus is taken into custody, okay, to be crucified. So, while he was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper and reclining at the table, there came a woman with an alabaster vial of very costly perfume of pure nard. And she broke the vial and poured it over his head. Okay. But some were indignantly remarking to one another, why has this perfume been wasted? For this pure perfume might have been sold for over 300 denarii, and the money given to the poor. And they were scolding her. But Jesus said, let her alone. Why do you bother her? She has done a good deed to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you wish you can do to them. But you do not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for the burial. Truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be spoken of in memory of her. Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went off to the chief priests in order to betray him to them. They were glad when they heard this and promised to give him money. And he began seeking how to betray him at an opportune time. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb was being sacrificed, his disciples said to him, where do you want us to go and prepare for you to eat the Passover? And he sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, go into the city, and a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him. And wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, the teacher says, Where is my guest room in which I may eat the Passover with my disciples? And he himself will show you a large upper room, furnished and ready. Prepare for us there. And the disciples went out and came to the city and found it just as he had told them. And they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he came with the 12, and they were reclining at the table and eating. Jesus said, Truly I say to you that one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me. And they began to be grieved and to say to him, one by one, Surely not I. And he said to them, It is one of the 12, one who dips with me in the bowl. For the Son of Man is to go just as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. And while they were eating, he took some bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to them, and said, Take it, this is my body. And when he had taken a cup and given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. And he said to them, This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I say to you, I will never again drink of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God. After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, You will all fall away, because it is written, I will strike down the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. But Peter said to him, Even though all may fall away, yet I will not. And Jesus said to him, Truly I say to you, that this very night, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will deny me 3 times. But Peter kept saying insistently, Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And they all were saying the same thing also. They came to a place named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, Sit here until I have prayed. And he took with him Peter and James and John, and began to be very distressed and troubled. And he said to them, My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch. Excuse me. And he went a little beyond them and fell to the ground and began to pray that if it were possible, the hour might pass him by. And he was saying, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. And he came and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying that you may not come into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again he went away and prayed, saying the same words, and again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. And he came a 3rd time and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? It is enough, the hour has come. Behold, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand. And I just want to suggest one thing. As the Peter, James, and John were there, and Jesus told him to stay awake. And then he went and he prayed to his Father, and he said, Your will, not mine. Okay? And God's will is that Jesus would be betrayed and crucified. This whole thing is God's will. This whole thing is God's plan. Okay, so then when Jesus came back, the disciples, the 3 apostles were sleeping, Peter, James, and John. So Jesus woke them up, said, Stay awake. And he went and prayed to God, Your will, not mine. He came back, they were sleeping again. He said, Stay awake. He went back, he prayed the same thing. Your will, not mine. He came back, they were sleeping. It was God's will that they be sleeping so that this betrayal could take place. It's too late. If they'd have stood watch, they would have said, Master, they come. You see what I mean? Or possibly. Anyway, immediately while he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came up, accompanied by a crowd with swords and clubs, who were from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now he who was betraying him had given them a signal, saying, Whoever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him and lead him away under guard. After coming, Judas immediately went up to him, saying, Rabbi, and kissed him. They laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood back drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as you would against a robber? Every day I was with you in this temple, teaching, and you did not seize me. But this has taken place to fulfill the scriptures. And they all left him and fled. And this is verse 51. A young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen sheet over his naked body. And they seized him, but he pulled free of the linen sheet and escaped naked. And escaped naked. So verse 50 and 51 talks about this young man. I personally believe that this is Mark. Mark, the writer of the book. Mark is younger than the other people, the apostles. Mark was just a teen. He was a young man. And when he heard of this commotion, I am sure that he went out to meet his master, because he walked with Jesus the whole time. But not like this. The apostles told him these stories. He was present for this last part, though. You see what I mean? But this young man, I believe, is the same young man who had the fish and the loaves in one of the other Gospels, because they talk about a young man, and I believe that was Mark following him, but he was just a boy, not old enough to be out a full disciple, But he was also the first one to write one of the Gospels. Anyway, I just believe that the young man, the young naked man, was Mark. My own personal belief. And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes gathered together. Otherwise, how would he know about that story specifically when none of the others mentioned it? Peter had followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he was sitting with the officers and warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council kept trying to obtain testimony against Jesus to put him to death, and they were not finding any. For many were giving false testimony against him, but their testimony was not consistent. Some stood up and began to give false testimony against him, saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another made without hands.' Not even in this respect was their testimony consistent, because they were smashing together two things that Jesus said. Then the high priest stood up and came forward and questioned Jesus, saying, 'Do you not answer? What is it that these men are testifying against you?' But he kept silent. It did not answer. And that's because of prophecy. Okay? And he had nothing to say to him. They were going to do this anyway. Again, the high priest was questioning him and saying to him, 'Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?' And Jesus said, 'I am.'" And that's the end. "And you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." That's a reference to Daniel, book of Daniel. I just read, so on video. So tearing his clothes, the high priest said, "What further need do we have of witnesses?" And the reason is because Jesus said he was the Christ. "I am the Christ. I am the Son of God." Well, that's it. Kill him. Anyway. "You have heard the blasphemy. How does it seem to you?" And they all commanded him to be deserving of death. Some began to spit at him and to blindfold him and to beat him with their fists and to say to him, "Prophesy." And the officers received him with slaps in the face. As Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came. And seeing Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, "You also were with Jesus of Nazarene." But he denied it, saying, "I neither know nor understand what you are talking about." And he went out into the porch. And the servant girl saw him and began once more to say to the bystanders, "This is one of them." But he again denied it. And after a little while, the bystanders were again saying to Peter, "Surely you are one of them, for you are Galilean too." And it was because of the way that he spoke. They knew he was Galilean. Okay. But he began to curse and swear, "I do not know this man you are talking about." Immediately a rooster crowed a second time, and Peter remembered how Jesus had made the remark to him, "Before a rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he began to weep. And yeah, surely you are one of them too, or Galilean. The Jewish people were huge racists against people who were actually their own people. and against others too. But that's why God continually tells them to, be kind to foreigners and strangers. Anyway, that's Mark chapter 14, and that is all I have prepared for today. So thanks for listening to me read that. Listen to me read that to you, and God bless.